Hey guys, do you have a deck that looks a little bit shabby and you want to revitalize? Well, I can show you how to do that. It's really a three-step process where it starts with cleaning your deck, then giving it a good sand, and then using a really good product to put a solid stain or a semi-transparent stain on your deck. Let me show you how to take it from cleaning, sanding to a final product that looks great. Okay, so we've got into the backyard of our customer's home, and we see there's this beautiful deck in the backyard that needs some love. As you can see, it's got some stain on it from the past. It appears to be a solid stain. So what we're going to want to do is clean this deck to start to get rid of all of the algae. So you can see over here, there's a ton of green algae and mildew that we definitely want to get rid of before we apply any stain to it. We've also already replaced some of the deck over here. We had some rotten boards, so we put some new 2x6s and pressure treated on this deck to get that looking like the rest. So the process of cleaning is a little bit detailed. Some people like to just power wash the deck, but we like to use a product because it's a lot more gentle on your deck. You don't want to be ruining your deck by getting really aggressive with a power washer. That's a common mistake made by people, is that they use the power washer and they're very aggressive and it ruins the deck. So we like to use a product from Home Depot, from Behr, for the deck. This here is Behr's all-in-one wood cleaner. So we apply that to the deck, and that starts to agitate all the wood and mildew, the mildew on the deck. And then we use this hard bristle brush. This is actually the key step to the process. You've got to use a hard bristle brush to get in there, and you've got to use some strength and some power to really push down on that. So a combination of using this solution with a hard bristle brush is the key to getting all this mildew off before you do any work. We also like to use a power washer. Now, to be honest, a power washer isn't necessary. You could use a garden hose to rinse this off if you really do push hard on that brush, but I do like to use a power washer. We've got this great power washer here. It's a steel product, and it's the RB200. It's about 2,500 PSI, so it's got quite a bit of pressure, and it could be very aggressive. So you need to be really careful when you're using this product. We rented this actually from Mount Nemo Sales and Service. It's in Burlington. It's a great place to either buy, service, or rent your equipment. So we're gonna use cleaner at first. We're gonna scrub it with a hard bristle brush. Then we're gonna rinse it off with a power washer, and that's gonna leave the deck looking great and ready for sanding. I'm gonna get started with cleaning the deck. We're gonna use, as I spoke about before, the Behr all-in-one cleaner. So it goes 1-to-1 dilution rate. So we're gonna start with water. You always wanna put the water in first and then the chemical in second, so it's diluted as you're pouring it. So let's get started. So before you start putting on the solution, you want to make sure the deck has a nice little wetness on it. So unfortunately it rained last night, so we don't have to wet it because it's already wet for us to get started. So as you can see, I'm starting kind of in the corners, and I like to do a border first and then work my way through the deck to make sure I don't paint myself into a corner. So there is a lot of dirt on here already. That's okay. We're going to clean it all off in the end with the power washer, so it doesn't matter that this dirt's on here already. We also want to let it soak for about 10 to 15 minutes before we clean it off. So I'm going to just get one section done, and then you do not want to let it dry before you start scrubbing. So you want to make sure that you're doing a section, putting it on, doing a hard scrub, and then rinsing it off. So the key is to make sure that it doesn't dry out before you start scrubbing. So I'll probably just do this section, get this off with my boot, and then I'll start scrubbing. It's also really nice to have a pole so you don't have to get on your hands and knees. You got to cut back these hydrangeas too to get some more space for us here. It's also about 35 degrees Celsius today, so it's drying pretty quick. So I'll probably just start with this section now and then switch out my pole and put the scrub brush on the end and scrub a little bit before it dries out. Scrubbing is actually the most crucial part because the algae and mildew is really into the pores of the wood. It won't come off if you just put it on and rinse it off. I've tried that 1,000 times, but the real work of scrubbing, and not just scrubbing, but really pushing hard to get that mildew out of the pores of the wood is really important. I'm just gonna rinse this a little bit. If I put a little bit of water on the deck, it will reactivate the solution so that it starts to continue to work a bit. There's actually quite a bit of mildew on here, so It's taking a little bit of sweat and grit to get it out. So I'm just gonna wet it a little more first. Yeah, so just a little bit of moisture on that will help, and I'll just do a little bit. You can see on here how much stuff is being pulled out by with the scrub brush. Another important point, always with the grain. So if you're cleaning, power washing, scrubbing, sanding, always with the grain of wood. And use the power washer to clean all the gunk out because it gets really gummed up and it stops working. So it's good to take a break every 10 minutes or so, take the power washer, give it a good clean, and then get back to work. So we have put the solution on. We've given a really good scrub brush. And as you can see already, you can see the wood's changing color and coming back to its beautiful brightness. As I said before, the most important thing is to make sure you give it a really good scrub. Now we're going to get a quick rinse. We're going to be light and gentle with the power washer so not to damage any of the wood and get all that green algae off. We're using the Stihl RB200, about 2,500 PSI. Great product. Our crew loves it. I love it. And you can get it at Mount Nemo Sales and Service, just on Guelph Line. You can rent it, buy it, get it serviced all there. So first thing you want to do when you start the power washer is turn it on. There's a choke on the side, so you just want to choke it a little bit before you start it. You want to make sure that you have a full tank of gas. You want to check your dipstick to make sure there's oil in it. But when you rent it, it comes full of gas and already maintained, so I'm not going to check that because I know my guys at Mount Nemo did a great job. So I'm just going to choke it. And the other thing you want to do before you start, just make sure you don't have any kinks in the line of the hose. Before you start a power washer, always make sure the water is on before you start the power washer because you could burn it out. So I don't see any kinks in my hoses. I don't see any kinks in these hoses. One other tip, when you're using a power washer, this gets a lot of pressure in it. So you just want to release the pressure with the gun like that. There's no more pressure. It makes it easier to start the power washer. So we'll get it started. Okay, so we finished just this section for the cleaning process, and as you can see already, this part of the deck looks much better than the rest. So we've talked about this being a 3-step process. The first part is getting it nice and clean. We're gonna move on to sanding after this, and then staining. There is a little bit, you can see of some algae left over, and that's why sanding is really important, to make sure that you really get rid of all of the bits and get a nice porous area for your deck. Okay guys, so we're here in the back deck in Burlington, and we've already done some preparation on this deck. So as we spoke about before, cleaning is always necessary, especially on this deck that had quite a bit of green algae all over it. So we've given it a good rinse, a good scrub, and it's ready for sanding now. So we've got this, what this is called is a floor sander. It's basically an orbital sander, but really big, and it can help make quick work of a big deck like this. So we've rented this machine from Mount Nemo Sales and Service. So a rental of this floor sander will cost you $100 for a day. It'll make quick work for you. So we also have on the bottom of it, we'll show you, it's got a pad on here that it's just a Velcroed pad. So you have to, when you rent it, you have to make sure you get a pad, and then you have to get a piece of sandpaper that Velcros on it. As you can see, this sandpaper is 40 grit. So that's a very gritty sandpaper. So this is what we have found works the best on a deck like this. So 40 grit sandpaper and a nice pad that you get, and you just Velcro it onto the bottom of the machine. So what I've done here is I've added this weight. It's actually just full with water. You put water inside of it. And when you're sanding, you want to make sure you're going with the grain, but you also need to add some pressure. So when you're using a palm sander, you're usually pushing some weight into that. This nice extra weight added to the sander makes sure that we get a good push down on the sand. So there's a little lever on the back that we push it so that we can move this up and down. It's got wheels, which makes it a lot easier. And always sanding with the grain. You don't need to spend too much time on the boards, just a quick pass over it, and you'll see that you removed a lot of the stain and created some porosity for the stain to get into. You don't want stain to sit on the top of the deck, you want it to get right into those pores, and a nice quick pass of sanding will allow that wood to absorb your stain nicely. Another great tool is a palm sander. You may not have access to a floor sander or you have a smaller deck. It's not necessary to use the floor sander. We like to use it when we have a big open deck to make quick work of it, but a palm sander can be super handy too. So I can show you how to use that. It also helps get into the harder to reach areas and into the corners as well. So you can buy this almost for the cost of what it costs to rent one of those sanders. So this is certainly a great tool to use. Whether you're using Ryobi, DeWalt, Milwaukee, they're all great products. So again, we're using 40 grit sandpaper. Gives you a nice rough surface to create that porosity for your deck stain. So you just slap that on just like Velcro as well. Turn it on and get at it. Okay guys, we're ready to stain the deck. So we've followed the process, we've cleaned it, we've sanded it, it's ready to be stained. So we've chosen to use this Dulux professional finish. We have a great relationship with Dulux. They provide great stains. This is going to go with a solid stain. Stains can come in transparent, semi-transparent, and solid, and there's some in between those as well. But especially on a deck like this, which is a little bit older, it's a little bit worn, you're probably going to want to go with a solid stain. It's going to cover up a lot of the differences in the wood, and it's going to look great. Often people think stain is paint, but generally you're always putting a stain on a deck. And as we talked about before, why you want to use a stain is because it absorbs into the wood. It doesn't sit on top. So choosing a solid stain is a really good choice for a deck because it will go into the pores and it should last a long time. Dry deck, good preparation, and a great product, the three things that make a deck last long. Okay, so getting ready to stain here. First thing I want to do is open up the stain. You want to be careful not to dent the lid when you open the stain so you can close it later. Always like to clean off the lid of my can before I get started so it's nice and clean. And then I'm going to pour some of the stain into what I call a cut can. I only want to fill that a quarter full and close that back up. We've just got this from the paint store, so it's just been shaken. So normally you want to make sure you stir your stain, but since we just got this from the paint store, it's well mixed. And I always make sure that I pour my paint out of the French side of the can if you're in Canada, because you want to be able to read it later. So that's a little trick I like. So pour about a quarter in, and then make sure that you clean off this rim nicely so that you can close it again and there's a nice seal. So we're using Dulux solid stain. Dulux is a great stain. It actually used to be called Flood. Flood Stains is known as one of the best stains around, but Dulux bought Flood a long time ago. Not a long time ago actually, probably a few years ago. And we love this product. We've used all the products, Q-Tex, Sikkens, Sherwin-Williams, Benjamin Moore. They all have really good products, but we found that this one works the best from our friends at Dulux. So when you want to go start staining a deck, first thing you want to do is make sure you don't paint yourself in a corner. So you want to be systematic in how you approach it. And you always want to be doing a few boards at a time. The biggest problem with staining is that you can have lap marks. And what a lap mark is, if you stain part of the deck, stop and start again, you'll see an overlap mark there, and you'll see them all over the deck. So you only want to do a few boards at a time, and you want to finish that board. And you just have to stop at a natural break in the wood. So you want to do this board from here to the end. So you just do a few at a time. And then you always have to cut in these cracks. So people have a tendency just to paint the top of the deck, which is fine, because when you're standing straight down, you can see the top. But when you're walking along the deck, you can see all of the cracks. So you've got to make sure you're getting your brush into these cracks here and these cracks here. So I usually start with the cracks and then do the top. In terms of what to use, you can use many things to stain a deck, especially with solid stain is a lot like paint. So you can use a roller, you could use a sprayer, or you can use a brush. For this part, I'm just gonna use a brush, but because you have to get into the cracks, so the brush is always gonna be important. But you could also use a roller to do the tops. And we don't spray decks too often, but certainly a possibility if you're really comfortable with a paint sprayer. So I'm gonna get started. We're gonna do 2 coats. So applying the right amount of stain is also important. You don't wanna put on too much stain. You wanna do 1 coat to make sure you get into it. But if you put on too much stain, that can tend to bubble and won't dry nicely. So as long as you get some good coverage, then you're in good shape. So getting close to that fence, but not getting any paint on that fence. Any good painter will do that. You could use tape here if you'd like to, but if you're like me, you can cut a nice line without using any tape. Okay, so we've just got a few boards done here. The color looks awesome, and you can see how good the 3 boards already look. And this deck's gonna look fantastic once we get this nice dark brown stain on the whole thing. Okay, so that's the step-by-step process on how to stain your deck. You can either do it yourself or you can give us a call for a free quote. The number's below. If you want more information on how to do this, you can like and subscribe below for more videos on how to do things.